Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the Film Florida podcast. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. We also have a Film Florida merchandise page. Visit filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. Frank Conway is a unit production manager, assistant director, and producer with more than 35 years of experience in the industry. His credits include Florida-based Edward Scissorhands, many Baywatch titles, television series Las Vegas, Prison Break, Criminal Minds, SEAL Team, and recently Disney's Big Shot, just to name a few. We talked to him about how he got to this point in his career, the evolution of the industry, his advice for up-and-coming industry professionals, and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Frank Conway. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Frank.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start kind of at the beginning. What's your origin story?
My origin story is that I was born at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. I'm the oldest of six. We grew up in Glendale, California, where I went to Hoover High School. There I won the two-man basketball championships in 1972.
Nice.
That was good. Then I went off to college. I started out at San Diego State University. After a few years there, I did a summer program at University of California in Santa Barbara, film summer. And then I headed up to the University of California in Santa Cruz, where I earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in theater arts and film. And it was a great time.
It sounds like that college time frame is when you kind of got interested in the film industry. What kind of drew you to it?
Well, my mom was in the industry. She doubled Jackie Kennedy. She was Barbara Feldon's stand-in on Get Smart. So she was around it. And I just realized I didn't want to study business and go and sit in an office all day.
And do you remember your first job in the industry?
Yes, I do. My first job in the industry is a long time ago. And what I had done was when I got out of college and came home and looked for work, I got Variety, the Hollywood Reporter. I got even went to get the yellow pages in the phone book for finding companies and film places that I can send resumes to. And I would always follow up with those resumes. And one day I called Super Colossal Pictures, who was on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood. And a gentleman answered the phone. I said, "Hi, is Warren Deasy in?" And he says, "I'm Warren." I said, "Hi, Warren. My name's Frank Conway, and I sent you a resume a week or two ago regarding production assistance in related areas. Have you had a chance to look it over?" And then there was a pause, a little bit of a long pause, and all of a sudden he goes, "Do you own a van?" As a matter of fact, I do. You know, I had a Volkswagen bus that, that I had for a long, long time. And he says, "Why don't you come in and let's talk?" Went in and met with him. He was doing a show down in San Diego, in industrial, needed someone to pick up wardrobe, props, actors at the airport, bringing them back, scripts going to places. And, it was an 8-day shoot. And so I went to San Diego with these people, and it was a great time. So that was really good. As a matter of fact, they would use me anytime they weren't doing full-time stuff. So they'd get a project going to development, and when they wanted to shoot it, they'd give me a call. So that was great. As a matter of fact, one time, these people bought the merry-go-round at Griffith Park. And so one day he said, "Listen, I am getting a courier to deliver a check up to someone in San Diego for this merry-go-round. Do you want to make a couple $100? I just as soon give it to you than anybody else." I said, perfect. So we had a really good relationship.
Sounds like you were at the right place at the right time.
I was at the right place at the right time. And then after doing that, I got a call from Stacy Keach Productions. This is Stacy Keach Sr. not Stacy Keach Jr. or Jimmy Keach, but this was the senior who did industrials, documentaries, some commercials. And I went and worked for him for 3.5 years. I was their production guy. We became very close, and it was great. So after 3.5 years, it was time to move on. I figured out a way to get into the Directors Guild with all the call sheets and whatnot I had from Stacy Keach Productions. I got into the Directors Guild, and that was good, but I didn't have any experience on working television sets. I mean, doing production reports and, SAC sheets and all this stuff. Well, I worked it out. It came and went, and I worked that out. So that was good.
Well, let's jump forward a little bit in your timeline. I want to start with a Florida classic, Edward Scissorhands. You were the second assistant director on the film. And for those that don't actually remember, besides the stage production, Edward Scissorhands was primarily filmed in Florida, in Polk and Pasco counties in west central Florida. What do you remember about the filming of Edward Scissorhands?
It was a great experience. Wonderful people. The actresses were great and the actors were great. Tim Burton was great. On the first day of filming, I ran into him at the catering before we started, to check ourselves in. And I said, "How are you doing today?" I said, "We're all set for day one." He says, "Frank, I'm a little bit keyed up, but I think we'll be all right." Well, when he said I'm a little bit keyed up, I figured out what that meant. And I have borrowed that line ever since 1992. When he said keyed up, and something I would borrow it anytime I was a little bit frazzled or keyed up, I would use his line, to this day, actually. So that was kind of cool. I drove to the set every day with Johnny Depp. He and his Teamster driver and myself would drive to the set every day. Sometimes I would go home with other people and whatnot. Sometimes I'd go home with Johnny. I usually probably go home with somebody else because he could leave right away. Well, almost right away. He had to take off all that happy horse shit with his costume.
Yeah.
But he was great. He was wonderful. At the premiere, my girlfriend, who had come out to see me in Florida a couple times, and when I saw Johnny, he came up and gave me this huge hug, really good. And I reintroduced him to Liz, and that was great and all that. But Liz said, "I don't remember you knowing him that well." I said, "Well, we became friends." And that was kind of cool. I kind of had a thing for Diane Weiss, who was one of the actresses in the show. Just plutonic, flirting, and in hindsight, maybe I'll still call her.
And then shortly after that, you spent a great deal of the next decade working on a variety of Baywatch titles. How did you get involved with the Baywatch franchise?
Cool story. I started working for another company, JJH Productions, who also did documentaries, industrials, stuff for Mobil Oil. I went, different places in the country with them. But they also had done the official films for the United States Olympic Committee. And the first one they did was in 1980 in Lake Placid, where the U.S. beat the Russians in that, that goosebump hockey game.
Miracle on Ice.
And that was really cool. But so they did that, and I hadn't known them at that time. And the Olympics were coming up, and then they had the contract to go to Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. So, I put my name in the hat. I said, I wanted to go, and they liked me, so I was hoping that was going to go. Long story short, the person that did my job on the 1980 Olympics wanted to do it too. And so he had done it, and he was going to go again, and he was kind of out of the business. He bought a phone company, just cellulars were coming out, with one of the cameramen. So I was bummed. I said, I'll fly myself over there, in coach, or I'll be a stowaway, but I just, I want to get out of here and I want to go do something. Well, we couldn't do that. So a couple of weeks go by. And I get a call from Gay Hennessy, one of the producers on the company, which is a very small company. And she says, "Hi, how are you?" I said, "Good." She says, "Do you have a passport?" I said, "I do." She goes, "Well, if you're available, we'd like to bring you to Sarajevo, Yugoslavia and do the Olympic film with us." Okay, bitchin'. And that worked out. The other gentleman who had bought this phone company with one of the cameramen, all the investors didn't want both of those people to leave the country.
Mm.
So he had to stay, and that's where I came in. So I went and did this film in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. Really cool. And I mean, really, really cool. I mean, I found myself at the ski jump, up with me and the cameraman inside that little thing. And, we saw the guy's butt is in our face, and he just goes off, and, we stifled the guy, and we pan down, and, there's a million people down there waiting for this jump. I mean, it was just really, really cool. So we had all credentials. We could go anywhere we wanted to. We'd get great venues to film all this stuff in. I met somebody too there, and she was very nice, and we had kept in touch. And as a matter of fact, she checked me out on Facebook 8 years ago, and her husband had passed away, and she wanted to pick up where we left off. So, but that hasn't really happened. We haven't seen each other, but we're in touch. So that was Sarajevo. Later on in 1984, I went and did the Olympic films in LA.
Mm-hmm.
In 1988, we did the Winter Olympics again in Calgary, Canada. Well, the reason I'm telling you all this is because the executive producer of these films was Greg Bonin.
Okay.
He and I became close. Well, Greg Bonin created Baywatch. He was a lifelong lifeguard, and he created Baywatch. It was him, and he got together with his wife's, his sister's husband, who was a writer, and Michael Burke was another writer. That was Doug Schwartz.
Yep.
And he knew me, and he wanted to bring me along. So I went over to Baywatch, and I started working as the first assistant director. Did that for a couple of years. Then they promoted me to a unit production manager, and then I produced the last 6 years of Baywatch. That's including 2 years of Baywatch Hawaii.
And now Baywatch is one of the most iconic franchises in television history. I mean, I don't know another title that had so many offshoots from a series and movies and television specials. When you were working on the series and the movies at that time, did you have any sense of really how big the franchise was?
Yes, I did. First of all, the rumblings around the office. And number two, TV Guide came out with Baywatch on the cover of it that said the most popular television show in the world. So we all got that. And we kept on going because we came in under budget. If it was unaffordable, they weren't going to pick it up. And we knew that. So we did good. When we left LA, we brought a handful of people over to Hawaii. So interestingly enough, I'll tell you this part. So we were going to move the show to Australia, just because it was going to be much cheaper. We had gone over there to check it out. We filmed 4 episodes over there to do the transition kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right before we were going to make the move, the people at the beach area where we were going to film, we're getting upset because they were going to create a whole muckus and trash we're going to leave around and all that. Well, we weren't going to do that. We leave places cleaner when we leave than they were when we got there. So Al Massini and April Massini, was a huge person with Miss America and the beauty pageants, and he also did Entertainment Tonight and all kinds of other stuff. Well, they called and said, "Listen, hi, we're seeing this stuff on CNN about having problems going to Australia. Come to Hawaii." And we said, we were actually going to fly over there the next day to Australia to go to the town meeting. And, we were going to present our side of the case. And she said, "Well, why don't you come to Hawaii?" We said, "Well, Hawaii is a little too expensive. we're getting a lot of things from the government over in Australia, and I don't think you could compete. Well, like what? What are you getting from the government? I said, well, we're getting free first class airline tickets. We're getting free hotels. They're building us a tank. We need a headquarters to where we can, base our story out of. And she goes, okay, I'll call you back. Hangs up the phone, and she calls the governor. They're tied with the governor. So she calls us back in 15 minutes and says, okay, we got it all. We got all that stuff for you. And we said, well, wait a sec, because it's really not quite that easy. But I tell you what we'll do. We're going to go to Australia now, and they'll send me from Australia. I'll stop by Hawaii on the way back just to kind of go through the motions. So I fly back, on the way to LA, and it was me and one other person, and they showed us around Hawaii. They had the film commissioner, they had a location manager with us, Alan April Massini, representative from the governor's office, and they took us around and showed us everything that we were wanting, and it was goosebumps and just totally amazing. So later that day, where we're at the headquarters that we're going to use, this lifeguard headquarters, standing on the top of that thing, and I called Greg in Hawaii. I'm sorry, in Australia. And I said, hey, hey, how are you? Listen, I said, don't sign anything. Okay, don't sign anything yet, because this is just really fantastic. He says, well, I got the pen in my hand right now. Don't sign anything. I'm telling you, this is real. And so he goes, okay. And he flies over the next day, which is 2 days later. He comes over. We took him on the same bit that they took me around. And he was just as taken by it as I was. Now, here we've been talking the studio into Australia for the past 9 months.
Right.
And now, we're flying home to LA, and we're sitting, at the front of the plane, and we're figuring out how we're going to do this and how we're going to just, change our minds. We want to go to Hawaii. So what we did is Greg and I sat down and we did a list of pros and cons of each location. And we were meeting from the people of Pearson Television and Fremantle, and we were going to present this to them. So when we did it, we came in, and there's people from New York and whatnot, and we're doing our spiel. And at the same time, we brought in Hawaiian girls dressed in the yellow bathing suits, and they had leis, and they went down and put them all over all the executives. Mm-hmm. Now, it was kind of transparent, what we were doing, but it was still very cool. Mm-hmm. And they're sleeping on it, and we got the proof, and everybody talked to what was going on, and next thing you know, we're going to Hawaii for 2 years, filming the last bit of Baywatch.
Wow, it's amazing what happens when they actually want you.
It was fantastic, because both locations wanted us.
Yeah.
And I had a great friend who did what my job was in Australia, and he was fantastic. And I hated to give him the bad news, but we compensated him for all the work he had done, and he turned out to be one of my best friends.
And now, after you did Baywatch for all those years, you hit a number of really popular television series, including My Wife and Kids in 2002, ER in 2003 and 4, Las Vegas in 2003 and 4, and then Prison Break. Talk about that period of your career. Anything specifically stand out, or one series that you really enjoyed more than the other?
They were all good. But I did My Wife and Kids because they did 2 episodes in Hawaii, and people who got the word out that I know Hawaii like the back of my hand now. And I know people, and I know, how to get cameras over there and everything that needed to be done. So I went and did My Wife and Kids in Hawaii. ER, I also did in Hawaii. I did 3 episodes. I did the one where Anthony Edwards dies of cancer on the North Shore of Oahu. And the other 2 episodes, we filmed Hawaii as the Congo. And it was just really quality TV. It was just, if you ever had a chance to look at those episodes that are in the Congo, actually they went and filmed one in the Congo before we had done the stuff in Hawaii, but it was fantastic.
So you became kind of the Hawaii guy.
I kind of became the Hawaii guy. I've done some pilots over there. When I was doing Las Vegas, Universal was going to be doing a show in Hawaii, and they wanted me to go do that too. So I left Las Vegas and Jimmy Kahn and all that, and went and did another show in Hawaii called Hawaii, and it was a police show, not very good, and it got canceled after we did 6 episodes. And
yeah. So after that, from 2006 to 2009, you were on Criminal Minds, and you were the unit production manager for 62 episodes and a co-producer for 14. I think that was the longest stint on a series for you since the Baywatch days. Tell us about your time on Criminal Minds.
It was a great show. I had interviewed an assistant director that I brought to Hawaii with this show called Hawaii. And he was a friend of mine, and he was going to go back to Criminal Minds, and he knew they were looking for a unit production manager, co-producer type guy. Mm-hmm. And he called Ed Bonero, who was the showrunner of the thing. He says, listen, I just worked with this guy. He's he's great. Do you want to meet him? Went and met him, the next day, and got the job later on that afternoon. And so wonderful people, wonderful scripts. Locations were a challenge because we did plenty of episodes in other places around the country.
Right.
But that worked out really well. We were getting used to that, and we had great location managers. So it was cool.
Now, were a lot of those episodes actually shot in those different locations, or did you guys have
No. We would shoot LA for all those locations.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So that's how we did that.
So yeah, so your location manager had to match a lot of different places.
He did. We had 2, and we had each of them had an assistant. So we were well staffed in that area.
Yeah, that's cool. And then you were on a couple different series in the last decade, but recently you were the unit production manager for Disney series Big Shot with John Stamos. And I bring that up because my kids like the show, and I told them I would ask what it was like working with Uncle Jesse.
It was wonderful working with John Stamos. I mean, he was a great guy. He was always prepared, always knew his lines, and he was always pleasant to be around. So that was really cool.
It seems like that's a little bit different show, going up from, some of your dramas to, now that was a little bit of a drama, but it was a little bit younger audience, right?
Yep. It was a great premise. Have you seen it a couple of times?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So that he kind of got kicked out of coaching because he inadvertently threw a chair and hit a referee by mistake. And so he was kind of banned. And the only thing that his agent could find him was working at a girls' high school in San Diego, in La Jolla. And so, as you can tell, that brought up a lot of different stories. And it was very emotional, and it was good, and had a good lesson for people. And your daughter really liked it?
Yeah. But my daughter, who's 18 now, and my son, who is 10, I mean, they were big fans of Fuller House and Full House from back in the day. They watched the reruns. And so when that came out, I thought, well, it's Uncle Jesse and it's basketball, so let's get the family and watch this new series. And so we definitely watched it. Yeah.
Great. It was really cool working on it too. Again, wonderful people. And I was working on that when the pandemic struck.
Right.
And we shut down for 6 months. Then we went back and followed all the regulations, and we were getting people that were in Zone A, which I was in Zone A because I went on the set often and whatnot. And we had to get vaccinated or get tested Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the people that were in Zone A.
Yeah. Now, you've been doing this television thing for a while. Besides, the obvious like technology, how have things changed, since you started in the industry?
One of the big changes is how much diversity exists now. There's many more women directors and art directors and minorities all the way around, Hispanic, African American, women especially.
Yeah.
And that is really, that's the big change. And it was, a long time coming, so it was good.
Yeah, it different voices, different perspectives give you better stories.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And that includes we had women writers for John Stamos and Big Shot. So
yeah,
that
that's
really
cool.
worked out well.
Now, the obligatory question, of course, is that people look at your career and look at your credits and say, "Man, that's awesome. I want that." What advice do you give people that are hoping to achieve half of what you've been able to accomplish?
The first and foremost is never give up. Sometimes it could seem insurmountable what you're trying to do, whether it be an assistant director or, the assistant director's training program or any specific position you're looking at. Just don't give up. It's interesting because there's no exact science on how to break into the guild. But what I think you need to do is figure out your own way. I mean, there's people do it in a lot of different ways. You become an assistant director. That's what I wanted to do, and I figured out my way to do it. Finally getting into the Directors Guild was the topper. So all that's good.
Good. Now, what's next for you?
What's next for me? I'm semi-retired. I'm going to do one more show, and it's going to be a wonderful show and a great show, but I'm not at liberty to discuss it right now. But when it does come out, and we're in development right now, when I can speak more about it, I'd be happy to come back and talk with you again specifically about the one show, because there's a lot to talk about.
Excellent. That's a little suspenseful. We love that. So, Frank, I know how busy you are. You and I chatted about this before we started recording. We've tried to do this a few times and had to reschedule for a variety of reasons. I really appreciate you sticking with me and wanting to do this. And we really enjoyed having you on the Film Florida podcast.
John, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. I'm finally glad that we are happy to get it done. And again, I'm around. Once I can talk more freely about this upcoming show, I'll give you a call and we'll work something out again.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.